Corporations obtain assets primarily by borrowing money, operating at a profit, and by issuing stock. Issuance of stock is unique to a corporation. The owners of stock, also known as shareholders, anticipate that the business will operate at a profit and their investment will bring them an adequate return. The shares of stock represent their equity interest in a corporation. Each share of stock represents a right to vote for the board of directors who ultimately manage the corporation. So the more shares of stock a shareholder has, the more influence they will have on how the business is managed. Shareholders can be individuals, estates, trusts, partnerships, or other corporations. Once shareholders elect the corporation's board of directors, the board's job is to direct corporate affairs, make policy, and select a president for the corporation, typically called the CEO or Chief Executive Officer. What is his responsibility? The CEO is responsible for managing the daily operations and enforcing the policies established by the board of directors. He could be a member of the board himself. However, he needs to cooperate with the board to ensure their directives are implemented appropriately, or the CEO can expect to be fired. If a shareholder owns more than 50% of a small corporation's stock, then he controls who will be on the board of directors and in most cases will vote himself as a board member. Simultaneously, he can also select himself as a president and CEO of the corporation, thereby being in full control of the business. The larger the corporation, the more sophisticated it becomes, and the more beneficial it is to separate the board members from the officers. The difference between a shareholder and a partner, which we discussed in the last session, is that a shareholder is completely and distinctly separate from the corporation. The corporation is deemed to be its own entity in the law's eyes. It is this understanding that provides the shareholder with protection against corporate creditors. The incorporators set a maximum number of authorized shares. The shares issued are called outstanding shares, which cannot exceed authorized shares. Stock the corporation buys back from its shareholders is called treasury stock. A corporation can issue different kinds of stock with various rights, powers, and obligations. Common stock is a class of stock that gives the shareholder rights to the potential of capital appreciation, voting power in proportion to the number of shares held, and a share in the profits, which are called dividends. However, common stock is subordinate to preferred stock. Preferred stock holds preference over common stock by having a preferred position when dividends are paid or when the corporation is possibly closing. Often dividends are cumulative, which means that if 1 year dividends are not paid, they can accumulate from year to year and are paid to preferred stock shareholders before they are paid to common stock shareholders. In exchange, preferred stock owners do not have voting rights. Corporations like issuing preferred stock because it's a way to raise funds without relinquishing control. Sometimes, though, preferred stock is convertible to common stock. Frankly, it's unlikely that you'll ever prepare taxes for a corporation holding preferred stock because this typically occurs in medium to large corporations who have their own tax departments. As with all property, calculating the cost or basis of a taxpayer's shares of stock is a significant part of understanding the tax consequences of any transactions involving those shares. We will examine the question from the perspective of both the corporation itself as well as the average shareholder. First, for the shareholder. In tax language, the basis or cost of the stock received by a shareholder is the tax basis of property transferred, adjusted by any gain or loss recognized on the transaction. In most cases, the stock is purchased with cash, so the shareholder's basis is the cash amount given. If, however, the shareholder also gives other assets, the stock's basis is equal to the fair market value of the asset given, less any debt assumed. Let's assume that Tom started his new corporation by purchasing 100,000 shares with $10,000 in cash and equipment with a fair market value of $20,000 for which the corporation assumed $5,000 in debt. So the basis in the stock purchased was $25,000. In other words, his basis in each of the 100,000 shares purchased is 25 cents per share. The corporation's basis is the carryover basis of the transferor. For example, if cash was paid for stock, the corporation's basis is equal to the cash paid. The cost of issuing stock is neither deductible nor amortizable, but is treated as a reduction of the proceeds received from the issuance of stock.